possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
Well, it's good to be back with you on a Sunday night. I'm your host, Shane Seeley, for tonight's edition of The People's Business. And it's that time of year, so we're going to get into the business end of things as we talk about hurricane preparedness and what you need to do at home and for your business and what's happening at the national level as well. So tonight, joining us on our panel, we have the Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Kerry Hinds. We also have Brian Murray. He's the Acting Director of the Barbados Meteorological Services. Charles Yearwood is here with us as well. He is a Senior Technical Officer with the Drainage Division, and Selwyn Brooks, a member and former President of the St. James District Emergency Organization. Stick around, we will have a lot to talk about, and we'll find out how Barbados is preparing for this year's Atlantic hurricane season right here on The People's Business. Let's talk hurricane preparedness. With just days away from the hurricane season and concerns about the activity in the Atlantic this year, Barbados and the region, we need to be prepared. So that's why we have the experts on with us tonight. Just let's go through the list of those joining us for this edition of The People's Business. Just for you again, Kerry Hinds is the Director of the DEM. Brian Murray, he's the Acting Director of the Met Office. We also have Charles Yearwood. He's a Senior Technical Advisor with the Drainage Division, and Selwyn Brooks with the District Emergency Organization there in St. James. Good to have you on, lady and gentlemen. Welcome to The People's Business. Now, when we talk about the Atlantic hurricane season, everyone likes to hear about the predictions. How many hurricanes, how many storms are predicted for the year. So normally I would start with the lady, but we want to go to the Met Office first. Brian, tell us about the activity expected in the Atlantic this year for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season.
First of all, I want to say a pleasant good night to you, Shane, and a pleasant good night to the panel and to the listeners of Barbados, Eastern Caribbean, and also on Facebook and YouTube. Now, according to the latest predictions that we have received from the National Oceanographic Administration, they are predicting between 12 to 16 storms, and of those storms, about 6 to 8 will become hurricanes, and out of those 6 to 8 hurricanes, you will have 1 to 4 major hurricanes. I want to make a correction for the hurricanes. It is 5 to 9 hurricanes and 12 to 17 named storms. So that is the prognosis for this year.
And with Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off there, Brian.
And according to the average, the cultural averages, that's around 14 named storms, 7 of which will become hurricanes, 3 will become major. So in a nutshell, I would say you will have a near average hurricane season.
Near average hurricane season.
Around.
And that is what I was going to mention, Brian, because I've been hearing a lot about the El Nino predictions for this region. And I guess you can explain for our viewers how that will affect what we see in Barbados and in our region.
The thing about El Nino is that whenever that is around, it usually results in fewer storms forming in the Atlantic. But it does not mean that you will not be affected by a system. And that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. One thing for sure is reduced rainfall is one of the effects of the El Nino, and that may be the case this year. But at the same time, we will have some periods where you probably get an extreme wet event or two. But this year, it is going to be a toss-up because, on one hand, you have the Atlantic waters pretty warm at this time, and that is one of the prerequisites for tropical cyclone formation. And at the same time, you have a Nino in the Pacific, which is predicted to be very strong this year. So it is going to be a tug of war between El Nino and the warm Atlantic waters. And that is why the NOAA had predicted 12 to 17 million storms.
And we are seeing the effects of climate change right around the world. There was that massive storm there in the Pacific causing some serious damage there. And we are really hoping for none of that in our region at all. Hopefully, even if there are more storms, they do not make landfall. But we still have to be prepared, and we know that the Department of Emergency Management has been in preparation mode for the past a few months as we ready ourselves for this Atlantic hurricane season. Kerry, it's always a pleasure to speak to you because you're that point person that guides what happens as far as how we prepare for the Atlantic hurricane season, we as a nation. Talk to us about those preparations. What are some of the key things that you have been looking to fine-tune as we get into the Atlantic hurricane season in just a few days?
Thank you. First, let me say good night to you, Shane. Good night to Barbados and my fellow panelists. Ensuring that the country is in a state of readiness and the first responders. We go through every year our usual planning process in terms of refining our plans and procedures and ensuring that all of us know what we are supposed to do when there is a system approaching. Over the last couple of months, really, we have been updating those plans and procedures, going through various legislations, just to ensure that we have basically all our ducks in a row. The orientation of the staff and first responders is very important to the process. And we've been undergoing a number of training exercises, reorienting persons to their roles and responsibilities within the national system. And then ensuring that our facilities are ready, our systems are in place in terms of our emergency communication systems. Across the various agencies, we're ensuring that their agencies, their systems are in place so that once they are asked to be pressed into service, they can do so. We ensure that planning is done at that national level, but we also feed into a regional level process. And over the past couple of weeks or so, we have been engaging with our regional partners to ensure that we are ready in the instance we have to respond to one of the countries, any country that may be impacted throughout the season. Part of our preparedness efforts as well is ensuring that we have our messaging ready for the public. And
Indeed.
I think persons would have seen that we were started mid-May this year, really pushing a lot of the information out there so that they too can get themselves ready.
Yeah, it's all about ensuring that the public, and we know that through your portal, the DEM's portal online, that they can get some additional information, and we want to talk about how you've been enhanced that for this Atlantic hurricane season. Let's hop over to the drainage division for a bit, and where we bring in the senior technical officer, Charles Yearwood. Cleaning the drains, I mean, that's not the only responsibility of the drainage division, but that's one of the things that you do to ensure that we are best prepared for any flooding come the hurricane season. And with this, the El Nino predictions, we're hearing about higher probabilities and chances for flash events, flash rain events, where you get a heavy downpour, a lot of rain in a short space of time. How is our drainage system set up to withstand? And I mean, we just saw some heavy rains last week, and what that did in the north and on the western corridor of the island. What are we doing to try to avoid some of those situations where we see that level of flooding?
Good night, panel. Good night, Barbados. Every year we go through this process of preparing for rainfall type disasters. You mentioned just now the flooding at Spikestown. We have another scenario for locations along the coast where we're seeing some beaches forming and blocking out falls. So every year is not the same challenges we have, and we go through the disaster cycle each year on a yearly basis. So there's some places where we've had flooding and we attempted to carry out either preventative or mitigation work. We recognize that we cannot fix all the problems, so we harness our resources to look at responses, and in that way we increase the number of teams that will respond to an after event and after an event. And recovery is important, but each year we go through and we fine-tune the system, as the director of DM mentioned. So the drainage division is part of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources. And so when we focus on flooding, the works carried out by the Ministry on Road Works in the last 2-3 years have also attempted to take more water off the road and so reduce the flood potential on the highways.
Let's go into the community now. We have a lot more questions for you as well, Mr. Yearwood, in terms of what's happening with drainage. But we want to get everyone to, chip in here as we have your introductory remarks. Selwyn, good to have you on. You have been busy for decades working with several communities, but in particular those in St. James as part of the district emergency organization there. What are some of the challenges that you foresee or that you have been trying to address going into the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season in your community?
Good night to members of the panel and to Barbados.
Good night.
The challenges that we will face from time to time is how can we effectively mobilize our communities to understand that what role they have to play, and also their level of preparedness for any level of impact that we would or likely to receive. It is a work that is ongoing. We have 30 district emergency organizations. Some are functioning at higher levels than some, but that is understandable because they are all voluntary, and therefore the department has been, over the last couple of years, 3 years in particular, has been focusing on what we can do to enhance not only the structure but the response capacity of each and every unit. So we will always have challenges because disaster management will have challenges. But the greatest challenge I see right now is the mobilization of the communities so that they will know exactly what they need to do so that we can reduce damage to property loss of life, and we should be in a better position to recover after the impact.
Well, hopefully after this program, everyone will have a better understanding of what we need to do in the community and as a wider nation in response to these preparedness for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Remember, callers, you can be a part of our program tonight as well and ask your questions to our panel. The numbers to call, 228-5562, 228-5563. We'll take a short break and be right back here on The People's Business as we talk hurricane preparedness. Back with you on The People's Business as we talk hurricane preparedness. Just days away from the hurricane season. It starts June 1st. Remember, callers, you can chime into the program as well. 228-5562, 228-5563 are the numbers to call, and we have a caller on the line already. But I also want to introduce as well to the program, I think we have with us now Dave Scantlebury. He is the Deputy Chief Technical Officer with responsibility for projects. So good to have you on tonight, and we'll get some comments from you shortly as well. But let's go to the phone lines. We do have a caller. Good night. Welcome to The People's Business. What's your question or comment? Familiar voice, familiar voice. Good night.
First time. You keep repeating things all over again. I remember I used to work with a lady over the NIS came to the door. You get first. Right.
Well, the caller, I was hearing him at first, but the caller seems to have been disconnected. Hope we could have him back on. He's one of our regular callers here on The People's Business. Dave, I want to come to you and talk about your role in hurricane preparedness as a part of our team tonight. You're the Deputy Chief Technical Officer with responsibility for projects. How does that affect the response in terms of preparedness for the Atlantic hurricane season? Talk a bit about what you do.
My role in terms of disaster preparedness really is to work with NTW in terms of making sure we're operational, not only during the emergency event, but generally throughout the year. We have 12 work centers throughout Barbados, the control center in Hinds, and then 11 others throughout Barbados. So as Mr. Yearwood was saying, what we do is, throughout the year, what we do is refine our procedures, and generally on the 1st of June, we are ready for the hurricane season.
As ready as we can be, and we always pray and hope for the best. Kerry, I want to come back to you to talk about how you have been preparing in terms of the messaging. There has been a lot of emphasis on technology. The DEM has made it a priority to put out a checklist as well for people to go to its website to ensure that they have the necessary items to be prepared. How have you been able to enhance the messaging through the technology now available, of course, through social media and other means? Talk a bit about that.
The messaging is very important. The information we need to get out there to the public so that they can prompt and make early action. That is very important because early action saves life. The use of, yes, our traditional contacts, but of course, having the service announcements, ensuring that the information is disseminated across our various platforms, so our YouTube, our Instagram, and that of our partners as well. A lot of the information we push not only across the Department of Emergency Management social media platforms, but we also partner with the Government Information Service, Public Affairs, and various stakeholder agencies to ensure that we push a lot of the information out there. We have so many different persons within our population. We have the persons with disabilities, we have other vulnerable persons, we have children, the elderly, and we try to ensure that we push that information. So you will see more and more we tailor our public awareness messages to suit different pockets of the population. And this is so very important because people receive messaging in different ways and they analyze the messages in different ways. So it's important that we cater to all the various segments of our population, ensuring that they receive messaging and they can act on the messaging. Technology is very pervasive and it enhances our various products. The use of it enhances our various products. So you will see a lot coming from the Department of Emergency Management in terms of utilizing various forms of technology to get that messaging across to the public.
And what about the warning system? Any updates there? I know we have been trying to develop that early warning system for other hazards, but the early warning system is also key for approaching systems as well.
Yes, over the past couple of years, we've been trying to enhance that multi-hazard early warning system. Persons will be familiar with the cap.cap, that system where we push mass messaging to the public via your cell phones or emails and across 4 of our radio stations. Now we are looking to expand that, our reach really, and include a number of radio stations, other radio stations within the system. We are particularly interested in ensuring really that more persons subscribe to the app. And it is important that persons receive that information. And from time to time, you will see us pushing the information, asking persons to download the cap app and add it to their applications on their phones. It is a work in progress, and we try to fine tune along with the Barbados Met Service or partners at the communications unit and others. We're trying to fine tune the products that we push across the app platform.
Yeah.
So that persons across the island, visitors to the island, persons utilizing the app will get the most important information they need so they can act and secure themselves.
Yeah, the alerts on cap.cap really come in handy. They show you if you are expecting a flood event, if you're getting alerts for a flood warning, flood watch, approaching storm, etc. And I mean, it's something that has become a tool that I think everyone should download on their mobile device. I hope I get an opportunity to show the population what it actually looks like. We do have a caller on the line. Let's go there before I go to Brian to talk a bit more about cap and the information that is provided there. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Thank you. My comments and questions is directed straightly to the person in charge of the drainage unit. And in some ways, they made their own negative contribution. But I have seen cases where
I'm not hearing the caller. I don't know if the panel is hearing what the caller is saying.
You can look into the...
Okay, I'm hearing you now. So caller, please, can you repeat the question? I apologize, but I wasn't hearing you at first.
Yeah, I hear now. Echo. As I said, this is directed to the person from the drainage unit. Right? And like I said, in some cases, they have made their own contributions to flooding by not having drains cleared. I have seen cases where silt have been in right up to the iron grill, which would suggest to me that those culverts was never cleaned. And when they do clean them, you have the silt that is taken out of the culvert, laying on the road for days, sometimes for weeks, even during the rainy season. So when the heavy rains comes in, that silt washes back into the drain. Then there's the case, which I won't blame him for this now, the case of illegal dumping. We all know that made that contribution to flooding in Barbados. We have laws in place for people who are caught engaging in such activities, but the laws are not enforced. Right? We can also identify the places that are most likely to flood out. Why wait until the actual hurricane season comes in upon us, then to start looking at these areas? Why not have crews on site to keep these waterways clear as often as possible? So when the water already comes in, the place will be clear.
Well, thank you, caller, for your question and your comments. Charles, I'll let you handle that one. So the caller had a couple of questions and a few comments, but one that really stood out is about the clearing of the drains and then the debris being left on the side of the road to wash back into the drains. Is this something that is still happening?
Yes, it happens occasionally. And what's happening is that the resource issue. We remember that we had a number of persons working, contract workers who are working alongside the road. Now, we go to a society where 30 years ago, 40 years ago, first house owners and landowners would clear in front of their land and move the material. In today's world, we have to have labor that go and do it. And we have as many teams when we have the contract workers who clear material, but we didn't have enough supervision. And even when we have supervision, we don't have enough trucks, and we had to move towards any 5 days and persons working flexi time, and that worked because the truck drivers come at the same time in which the drivers come out to clean the road. So we're at the point where we need to have drivers and operators coming out, say from midday to 8 o'clock at night, and the teams work in the early part of the day. And that was a challenge we recognized how we can fix it. But yes, we recognize that. The caller did mention that we wait until the rains are coming. The works undertaken by drainage and by public works, we have staff working 12 months a year. So the work that they're undertaking, whether it's cleaning drains, cleaning water courses, clearing outfalls, cleaning wells, is all part of work that contribute towards flood mitigation, hurricane preparedness, or prevention.
Indeed. Well, listen, let's take a quick pause here. We will have a few more callers come into the program tonight. We have another half an hour to go to get the information out to the public as we prepare for the Atlantic hurricane season here on The People's Business. We'll be back after the break. Let's continue our chat on hurricane preparedness right here on The People's Business. I want to go to Brian right now to talk about, well, just to continue on what Kerry was saying earlier about cap.cap and the information that we get through that app. Very important information. Brian, can you give us some more details about why this app is so important for the average Barbadian?
Hi, the thing about the cap.cap is that it sends out the most important information, for the layman on the street. And that is our aim at the Barbados Meteorological Services. I must add that we also have our own app, which is the BMS Insight, which is available on Android at the moment. So in the event that we see anything significant like excess rainfall, severe thunderstorm, haze warning, or even tsunami, we will send it out through our app. And at the same time, we also go through the cap.cap, so that's why we encourage Badians and business alike to download the app, so that they will always be informed at short notice.
Give us an example. We had that flood event there in St. Peter in Spicestown last week. What would the alerts look like around these events? Explain how it happens.
Okay, so basically, we have a network of automatic weather stations across the island. And those will measure the rainfall and we will get the data back to the office. So in the event that we see rainfall accumulations of, say, like over 40 millimeters within a very short time, that will trigger a flood watch. So what usually happens on the website is that when we send out that flood watch for the particular area of interest, that area will turn brown. Any rainfall between 0 and 25 millimeters to 30 millimeters within an hour, well, it will usually be a yellow. But in the case of what happened to Spicestown, we send out a flood watch. But be mindful that rain could be falling upstream and the waters could be running downwards towards the lowest point. So our gauges indicated that we had between 1 to 1.5 inches of rainfall within an hour, and that was what triggered the flood watch.
Well, it's good to see that we can get those alerts real time so that we can better prepare ourselves when they do occur. And these flood events, these are what Charles and his team and Dave deal with, because then they have to respond, especially if there's a problem with the drainage in the area. And Charles and Dave, I want you to go through with me. There must be a number of hot spots that you would have focused on in the lead up to this hurricane season. What are some of those problem areas that you have identified there in the drainage division?
Yes, there are some hot spots we've had over time, and as we carry out works, they come off the list of hot spots. So we've had spikes down, and remember that when we talk about spikes down, we're talking about spikes down and whole tongue along the coast. Every outfall or bridge or culvert you cross is a watershed. Water comes specifically from specific areas upstream. So while work was carried out in Spikestown in 2018 to 19, I think around that time, in Whole Town, the wider Whole Town trends still have the problem of flooding. And what we have done is to look at our capacity in-house, and we are going for engineering flood services for 8 of those areas. I think Ashton Village, Dover, Goodland, Martindale's Road, Pillisdorf and off Enterprise Road, St. Lawrence Gap, Trent and Wilcox. And we are attempting to look at those from a more heavy scientific approach where we look at the total watershed, because some of the areas like Dover and St. Lawrence Gap are at near sea level, and the approach we take to reduce flooding and mitigate flooding there will be different if you go in, say, in Wilcox Hill or Ashton Village. But those 8 are the hotspots we have. There are others that might be a lower order, but these are the priority ones we are looking at. And we're looking to carry out engineering works in 4 to 6 months, and then we do go to construction in a phased approach.
That's only
so we hope
part
that
of it, because
go ahead, Dave.
when Charles does his work that are targeted on various areas, what we are also doing, if we are building a road, doing any sort of rehabilitation, we actually increase the retention capacity of the roads that we are working in as well. So yes, he's working throughout the year on various targeted areas, but once we are working on roads, the idea is clean the well, increase the capacity of, which means actually get less water downstream, or when the water comes down, it's much later. And therefore, we're trying to target or to use different approaches to target flooding.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment there. And we do have another caller on the line. Let's go to the phone lines yet again. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Good night, Shane, to you and the party. My question was that we don't get things right first time. We keep going over the things over and over again. If you listen to the guy question that he asked the guy there, he asked the guy if the problems still reoccur with the dust and things still going in the drainage, and his answer was yes. I will never have these things going on and on all the time.
Well, thank you, caller, for your comment there. We had Charles responding to that question, and the Drainage Division is doing what it has to do to ensure that this is not a recurring issue. All right, let's talk to Selwyn now about what the DO is doing this year. Talk a bit about how you're preparing members. You've been there with the district emergency organization movement for some time. Talk about how you're preparing those volunteers for the task ahead.
When you recognize that a response to any impact, and I'm speaking in terms of an effective response, it will mean that persons will have to be trained. And I think the department has been making a greater effort to make sure that members are trained so that they will be able to carry out their response in a safe manner, because we don't want persons to get injured. We have a process where we have a community profiling where we go into the community and identify those hazards, the vulnerable persons, the vulnerable areas, so that we can have an idea of what is there in the community. And that information is shared with the relevant agencies like my comrade, Mr. Yearwood, so that they can plan and be aware of what is actually happening. The actual engagement process, there has been some increase in that because, as I said before, Shane, in terms of the challenges, it is not a job only for the district emergency organizations. Every member in each community, the time has come that they must now look in terms of what is happening with their community and even consider what they are doing to contribute to the issues that the community are facing. And let us, as a collective, see what we can do to resolve these matters as quickly as possible and to make sure that we continue to enjoy the standard of living that we do. There is a general perception that the government is supposed to do this, the drainage unit is supposed to do this, the Department of Emergency Management is supposed to do this. But what is the individual who live in the respective communities? What is their role? What are they supposed to do? So in terms of the function and particular what the district emergency organizations are now tasked in a more meaningful way to do is how can we get that message across to the members of each community so that we can build the level of community resilience that we are seeking to attain within the shortest possible time. We can't stop the hurricane, but we can prepare for it. Look what happened here recently with Elsa. Luckily, we did not have a lot of rain. Are we saying that we are satisfied that the community are very knowledgeable as to what they need to do so as to prevent the level of damage that occurred? The answer to that, some people will say yes, some people will say no. But the role of the district emergency organization is to how we can use the training that members have received so that we can share this information with our communities. And I'm hoping that communities will continue to be more receptive of this information, utilize this information, and see what we can do as a collective to reduce the damage associated with a number of impacts that may likely to come our way.
I think Hurricane Elsa was a real wake-up call for the country in terms of what we need to do to respond to these events. We hadn't seen a hurricane impact here in Barbados for quite a while. I mean, the closest thing for us in our lifetime would have been Thomas. But it's something that we'll continue to learn from and hopefully we can build on as we go forward. Let's go back to the phone lines very quickly. We have another caller there. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. You have a question for our panel?
Hello, good night. I would like to thank the District Emergency Organization for engaging us here in the Woodburn area.
I'm not hearing the caller.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
I'm hearing you now.
Yes, good night. I would like to thank the District Emergency Organization for engaging us here in the Woodburn area. We have a particular challenge in this area where it is one of the lowest points on the island. We have water shedding from above, coming straight down into this valley from several directions. And the way the road is built, it prevents the water from being able to shed and go across into the King Field. And what I would like to see, we need some serious engagement by the Ministry of Public Works to come and either sink some wells or to put a culvert to let the water get across, because we don't need a hurricane to have challenges in this area. We've been flooded out several times over, to the point where the fire service and the Coast Guard had to come into this area to rescue children from a day nursery. This was not a hurricane. This was just an unusual high water fall event. So this has been going on for years. This is
You said that this is the Woodburn area?
Woodburn area. We have
It's Woodburn St. Philip?
Yes, Woodburn St. Philip. We've spoken to the 2 representatives that have come in. The representative before never saw him. So, you know, this has been going on for over 25 years. And it is all well and good. We have programs like this. But then when we have real events and nothing is being done, people tend to get a little tired of the talk and nothing happening. There's hydrological data. There's modeling that can be done. There's a whole lot that is already known. And we need to see some action taking place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, caller, for your contribution here tonight on The People's Business. David, I want to come directly to you. Woodburn, as far as I know, this is one of the newer roads that would have been built. They have a sweetly paved road, if I'm not mistaken. And you would think that in doing that, in building out that new road and those new arrangements there, that you would be able to put some proper drainage in place. What is happening in this area?
Well, I believe Mr. Yearwood could probably explain better what's happening. What I would say is that what's happening infra construction in the wells in the area, if they aren't finished by now, that should help us. But the Woodburn area, I agree with the caller, there's quite a bit of
don't
storm
call me.
I
don't want to ready soon, so don't try calling me.
I would say that the solution is straight through other people's land, but I believe that something better would be to take the water off upstream at the source. But I believe Mr. Yearwood should be able to speak to this a little better than I can.
Okay, Charles, you want to come in on this matter with what's happening in Woodburn?
I sense what the question is about. I did not hear the caller, but I heard Woodburn. Woodburn, we're talking about Woodburn development and not the road, the main road.
Okay.
We have a number of developments in Barbados that were built in wider depressions. So Woodburn, the valley is a very shallow valley, and it takes water from Foursquare Plantation. Now, the lands to the east of the Woodburn development were former cane. It is out of canes now and is in rubland. And when you had cane production, you had tractors going in and plowing the lands, and that take up much more water than they do today, because you have the land lying, there's reinforcement, there's mechanization, there's no crops going on there, and so the land has been compacted. Now, while I think person says oftentimes, let's dig a new well. But Woodburn is about 30 meters above the water table, and we have 1 or 2 wells that were former plantation land, former plantation wells. They're 30 meters. So the wells go to water when you have rainfall, and then there's no way for water to go because the water sits, the runoff that goes into the well sits on the water table. And that's also dangerous, because we're talking about now water climate change. We're talking about potable water. And we know that if we allow water, dig wells deeper, we can pollute or contaminate our water table. Some of these older developments, like Goodland is a similar example. You don't have lands that are reserved for drainage reserves, so the roads take the water. Every bit of land at those times, where most of them were used for lots, and there's no way of taking some of those lands for drainage reserves at the lowest point of the development. And so we continue to have challenges. As we mentioned earlier, Phillipsdorf and Goodland are on the list of works for the flood engineering works, because we may need to acquire lots and take water off the road. So when you go to Goodland, you go to Woodburn, sometimes you see the water on the road, but then some lots are impacted, and those lots should not have been allowed for development. Now we look back years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when development came in, concerns for the environment weren't like it today. And much of our work also, I should say here, is also on prevention, where we assess plan applications and subdivisions and try to get a lot of them more, provide drainage plans and mitigate the potential for flooding. And these areas will require not the traditional wells, but detention ponds, may require diversion ditches, but the approach to flooding is not the traditional approach. It can't work anymore.
Okay, let's take one final break and then come back and have some final comments as we wrap up today's edition on The People's Business. We're focusing on hurricane preparedness. We're in our final minutes of today's edition of The People's Business, where we're focusing on hurricane preparedness. Let's go to the phone lines very quickly for one final caller, and then we'll have our final comments from our guests tonight. So good night, caller. Welcome to The People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Good night. Am I on?
Yes, you're on. What's your question or comment?
Yes, my question or comment is I'm dealing with the area of Wilcox. I did mention at a town hall meeting at St. Christopher's School, also on other occasions, of problems we are getting to the bottom of Wilcox Hill with that well. Now, the water coming to that well is normally coming from all up below the runway, bypassing the well below the runway, which is to the west of the runway. And when they get to the corner going to Wilcox on the right, and that well is right there opposite that road. The water is also bypassing that well and going down the hill to Wilcox, right in the bottom. And it is ridiculous for over 15 years or more. You cannot pass underneath Wilcox Hill properly. You have about 3 or 4 feet of water. And if your car vehicle stall, you have to get out and walk up to knees height in water. People walk and traverse that area when the rainfall on other people's property to get away from that water. I think the problem is that the well needs to be sunken. Whenever it's clean, the debris remain up there for a few days.
Okay, well, I'll let Charles respond to that problem there at Wilcox Hill very quickly. What are you seeing there, Charles?
Can you relay the question? I did not hear.
Apparently there are some problems at the bottom of Wilcox Hill. There is a well in the area where the water is bypassing it and causing some challenges for those who traverse the area. The water seems to be very high, leaving the road nearly impassable. And I want to advise anyone that when you see water that looks like it could pose you a challenge, especially if you're driving through the area, please try to find an alternate route. But the caller was mentioning some problems with high water at the area of Wilcox Hill, the bottom of Wilcox Hill.
Yes, that's one of the areas I mentioned earlier, but we have undertaken to carry further investigations. We found that there was a well used there for drainage, and a land developer has diverted it and used it for extracting water for agricultural use. These are things that, in the absence of having a terrier or having list all our wells, even you're talking, this is 30 years ago. Until we start to walk and investigate each of these areas, you find then some of the impacts and why we have flooding.
Right.
The work of developers, of landowners on their land, whether they extend or build new or reconstruct, oftentimes hinder flooding. We didn't have flooding like this 20 years ago, I'm told. So we are undertaking work. We are taking that well back into for drainage purposes, but we are looking at a wider area because some wells on the hill where you have persons who've constructed houses and built block some of the areas with concrete and marl and for development. So we're going back into the area and we identify some works that will reduce flooding.
Okay. It seems like we're going to have a program specifically for drainage, because a lot of people have been talking about the challenges that they have been having in their community. Kerry, I want to let you have the last comment, because you will be a part of planning the national policy for what happens. We see the hurricane shelter messaging. We see what you're doing at the DEM in terms of getting the message out on your various channels. What would you like to tell the public with the hurricane season just days away in terms of their preparedness for this Atlantic hurricane season? You have about 30 seconds.
It's important for the public to be prepared. At the national level, we are ensuring that we are in a state of readiness in the eventuality that there is some impact from what has occurred this season. And it is important that the public is involved, ensuring that they are prepared at an individual level, but also be your brother's keeper, ensuring that your neighbors and the community is prepared as well. Those business owners, ensuring that the businesses are also prepared. At the end of the day, disaster risk management and disaster preparedness is everybody's business, everybody's responsibility. Indeed. And we all have to play a part. And we are dependent on you, the Barbadian public, to be prepared to assist us in this whole national readiness effort.
Well, it was really good to have all of you here on the People's Business, different various elements of the National Preparedness Plan as we get ready for this Atlantic hurricane season. We will have to do a part 2 to this program on the People's Business as we talk about some of the other elements as we get ready for things to come. But again, thank you, and thank you to our viewers who spent the time on this Sunday night here with us. I'm Shane Seeley. Good night.
You're welcome.